Well, thank you for joining us today. And today we're going to just jump right in it. And I wanted to bring you on, Robbie, because one of the things that I hear people like to skimp and save and do a number of things. But the one thing that I advise people not to skimp and save is their inspection because you're so excited. You've already put down maybe 20% for the home, and then you have closing costs and you have a number of costs. But one thing that I would always encourage my clients to include in the cost, not as a luxury, but this is a must have, and that is the home inspection. And then sometimes I hear with Tracy, okay, wait a minute, this is a brand new home. What could be wrong with a brand new home? Are you sure? I mean, let's rethink this. Do I really need an inspection? It's brand new. I'm like, you're not buying a pair of jeans.
Right.
And even the pair of jeans that you're buying probably have been worn. So they're not as new and fresh as you think, and neither is that home, especially when you have a number of contractors coming through, a number of tradespeople coming through. And you know, Robbie, the one thing that they all have in common is human beings.
That's right.
People are building your home, even brand new construction. So sometimes you just need an oversight. And the one thing I encourage people is to have someone, a third party person, invested in your future, the future of your home, who's going to be your advocate, who's going to look out for you and make sure you're covered. Because the builders, they have their contractors, their tradespeople. Even many of the builders will have their third party person to come in and walk through the property with you. And that's great. But I just really caution people to skip that important part, that important partner, and that is the home inspector.
Yes.
And thank you, Robbie, for being here today.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I agree. It's something that a lot of people think, well, we go buy a new car. I don't need to have my car inspected. It's brand new off the line, right? Well, that's why they have warranties, right? Because often things fall apart or have problems. A lot of times you get recalls, right? Just with cars is a good example. So very much like you said, we try to tell people we're not fighting the builders per se. We're helping them because, like you said, they've got 10, 15 different contractors coming through sometimes, and they just don't know everything that they're doing. So it helps us keep them on their toes as well.
Okay, well, let's just get to it, because I know people want to be convinced that it really is something you should do. It's not something I'm trying to tell you. I don't get any residuals for you choosing and to get your home inspected. But the one thing I would not want is for you to call me up in 6 months and say, Tracy, I didn't realize I could have this home inspected, because had I known that, I would have realized that the roof was not fill in the blank, or the pipes fill in the blank. Because it's almost like being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. And hey, Philly fans or whoever else, don't even go there with us. But right? That is the quarterback.
There you go.
And when they win, we're all happy.
Right.
But when they lose, and it doesn't matter if something was, fumbled in the end zone, it all falls back on Dak. So similarly, even if I had nothing to do with whatever's going on with the home after you moved in a year or two, if you don't like it, it all falls back on me. So I'm like the MVP of the quarterback of the show. And, the complaints, I would hear them. And so we wanted to show you some things that you're going to commonly see. And Rob, I know you've got a top 5, you've got a hit list of things, folks, you just got to know. And this is not just for Texas. We understand that we have a reach that is throughout the country. So some of these things, no matter where you live, you really need to have these things, take a look at these things. And then we have some things that are very unique to Texas, some of our soil issues that you might want to be well aware of. But Robbie, I'm gonna let you get started. The 4 things that I know that I try to encourage my people to do when they look at the inspection, the 4 things would be the top, the bottom, the in, the out. So the roof, the foundation, the electricity that's going in, and make sure all of the lines are right, and the water that flows out, because we do want the water to flow out.
Yes.
So, Robbie, what are you seeing? What are some of the 5 common things that you see, or things you would say, hey guys, this is absolutely what you need to be well aware of, even if for some bizarre reason you decide to skip the inspection, which we don't advise, But
Right.
these are common things.
Yeah, absolutely. So with new builds, the most common things we see is for instance, the condenser when the AC is installed is a brand new unit, right? Well, a lot of times the HVAC guy is not an electrician. So one of the things we see a lot on new construction is that the breaker for the condenser is the wrong size. So your data tag on your AC will give you a max fuse rating or the maximum amperage. Let's say it's 30 amps. Well, sometimes that builder, yeah, there you go, 40 amps is in this example photo. And sometimes the breaker will be too big. It'll be a 50 or a 60 amp. And what can happen is as that AC is running, especially in Texas when it's really hot, what can happen is it can pull too much amperage and that breaker may not trip to protect that AC equipment. So we often recommend that the builder have their electrician replace that breaker. It's something that anybody can look for, and it's something that can be done relatively easy. It's not something a builder will balk at, but it is something that could become a larger problem later with the electrical becoming damaged or with the condenser itself becoming damaged.
Okay. So we've got the AC, and in Texas, the one thing you don't want damaged is your air conditioner.
Right,
We've got to
absolutely.
keep that running.
Yes.
What other things have you seen?
Yeah, another thing we would have would be something like missing insulation or low insulation. Sometimes the builder will have somebody come out, but there may be another contractor up there. This is a good photo right here. And
Oh, let me go back.
yeah, yeah, this is good. So this is two parts. So one, there's insulation that they need, but this particular photo is talking about a exhaust from above your cooktop. You have that range exhaust. Well, in this new construction I had several weeks ago, they did not terminate that exhaust outside. It kind of just dead end in the attic. Today's standards, that's supposed to go outside so that you don't have moist air or even like grease deposits that build up in your attic. But a lot of times you'll show up to a house and you'll crawl up in the attic and you'll see some insulation, but then if you like look past some of the ductwork, you'll see a pocket where they just have no insulation and it's just missing. That
Okay,
next,
so what's the downside of
yeah,
missing insulation? Other than my energy bill, it's just and the AC is going to run forever because I'm never
exactly.
going to get cool.
Yeah, so that's definitely the one of the more important reasons why it's good to have insulation. But it also helps with humidity control between the house and the attic. Um, so what happens is when you have insulation there, and it helps retains heat, but it helps keep moisture from building up in the attic. Anything that can permeate through your ceilings is going to just keep going through. Well, what happens is you build up a lot of excess humidity in your attic space because of that.
Okay.
Another common one that we see is the newer type of plumbing that we use is PEX lines for the supply and PVC drain pipes. So it's very common that we will see the PEX lines not insulated in the attic. I've actually walked into a brand new construction inspection, and the water lines. You see those the blue and the red lines there in that photo are not insulated. This particular photo is in a foam encapsulated attic, and a lot of builders will say it's not required, but best practice is to have those lines insulated so that they don't expand to the point of bursting and causing water damage. That's something we've walked into before. Freeze overnight. The builder never had a chance to insulate the pipes, and there was already water that was running through them, and the ceiling had come in because it had gotten so much water in the attic.
True
Um,
story.
yeah.
So we were part of the Mageddon a few years
Yes.
ago. We did everything right except one thing, and that one thing made a difference. So you get you do the little drip a
Right.
little bit. Then you get the little cups that you can get at Home Depot, Lowe's, or whatever that you put on the outside to cover
Right.
your faucets. We thought we were good to go. We were on the last day of the freeze before the thaw.
Right.
And I'm sitting in one of my living areas, and I just hear like rumble. And then all of a sudden, when you get that inside you,
Yep.
I hear this gush. So you're hoping you have an out of body experience. This is just, I must be still asleep. So
Right.
I get up, I rush, and I see water just flooding through the house. It was like Noah's Ark. I could not bail enough water out. I just had to surrender. And what happened is I forgot about the water heater
Yes.
in the attic above the garage, and it was not insulated. It
Yep.
was fully exposed. Plus, in a garage, above the garage, that's we're not heating that space.
Right.
And so I really now I have such an aversion to anything. If it's getting below, if it's getting toward freezing, we're wrapping it up. But we had the plumber come out, and sure enough, that pipe was left exposed. It was not insulated. So I can vouch for that.
Yeah, and it's something that seems so little. Like you're like, oh, it's just insulation. It's not a big deal. But yeah, like you've experienced it. It is a big deal, and it can cause problems.
Mhm.
So kind of talking about the attic still, kind of keeping with the theme. One thing that we'll often be looking for is the structure of the attic. So how it was built. Sometimes you'll see improperly cut rafters. Sometimes you'll see rafters that are mismatched in the sizing. They don't line up properly. And then a lot of times you'll find them missing braces. Like they'll run what's called a purlin brace, and the bracing doesn't have the support there. This photo
Mhm.
here that we have, Tracy, is an example of poor flashing. So this was along the edge of a house. When the house comes down like this, sometimes you'll have slopes that come down before they go into the gutter, right? Well, this was an area right in one of those valleys where it was running down the house. Well, flashing had lifted and pulled away, and over time, water had built up in this area, and that's a lot of moisture damage. I actually went over to that area with a moisture meter and my thermal camera, and it was actually wet at that time.
Wow.
Flashing is very important. It's something that can be easily pulled or bumped by a contractor accidentally. But if it's not checked out, it can cause real big damage, even though it seems like something small.
Okay, and then let me see if I can find a picture of a roof real quick for
Yeah,
those who are not quite sure what you mean by flashing. I do
sure.
have a picture. I don't know if I've got a good one to show flashing.
Yeah, so this
No.
you can see around where those kind of square looking things are. Below that is what is called flashing. So that is metal or plastic that is put on the bottom slope of the roof, and so as water's running down, it's going to go around it and over the top of it. Well, if that flashing, which is the bottom piece there, if that's ever lifted a little, even just a little bit, wind-driven rain can get underneath there and cause leaking and moisture and penetration. So in
Okay.
this photo that you have here, Tracy, that was around the dryer exhaust, which is that small black kind of hooded looking vent. Water had actually gotten past the flashing in that area, and in the attic there was moisture damage. One thing that was tricky about this house, it was a newer property. It had the radiant barrier, which you've kind of seen in some of these pictures with the shiny, reflective looking decking. Well, that can sometimes hide moisture. So when I saw that the roofing looked a little off here, I was able to go in the attic into that area, and I could find that moisture damage, and it was actively wet from recent rains as it was cloudy that day.
And then that could lead to mold. And
Right,
then now we have to do remediation. So
right.
it's like going to the doctor. It's better to get your checkups, your physicals before we need to go to surgery or other
That's
methods
right.
because we could have prevented it earlier. We
Absolutely.
do, yeah, we do have a question that's come in.
Sure.
And the question is, do people actually save money on future repairs when they get an inspection early on?
Yes. One of the best examples I have lived most of this year. Anytime you have a house that has cast iron drain pipes, they are more prone to problems such as corrosion because the cast iron will corrode from inside. And if the house is ever settled, it can sometimes break the cast iron. And yeah, that's a great example. So it'll rust internally and it will reduce flow. So I have found several examples where pipes have broken and offset. I found where the actual pipes had cracks in them as the house had settled or moved. And I've also found a lot of corrosion to the point where toilet paper and things would get stuck in those pipes. And we've saved several companies or several clients of ours thousands of dollars because we charge $250 for a sewer camera scope, and a cast iron repair can cost as much as $2,500 or more.
Mm.
So
And do you see those on older homes, correct?
that's right. Yeah, this is less of a concern with new builds, but I will say, even with the newer PVC, it's sometimes seen where we'll go out to and do a sewer camera on a brand new house, which you think, why would I need that? It's fresh new piping. Nobody's even used the bathroom in it. But it's coming down to, did the contractors do everything right? Sometimes before they're able to actually seal up that pipe, bricks will fall in there. Maybe you have a disgruntled employee, they'll stuff a piece of can or a water bottle down that pipe that will block it and cause it to flood inside the house. Often we'll see even where trucks have driven over where the drain pipes are in the front yard and have actually caved in and broken those brand new pipes. So
Okay.
definitely,
And I know that to be true because I was at an inspection a couple of weeks ago. And, I try to be there just a little bit before the clients and just kind of get an idea of what's going on in the home so I can kind of prepare myself and
yes,
prepare the clients. If we've got to hit a panic button, do we need to terminate this contract?
of
To what
course.
degree do we need to negotiate? And when I got there, the inspector had noticed something in the, what do you call this?
The drain clean out.
The sewer, yeah, the
Yeah.
sewer.
Yeah.
And he pulled me over and he said there was concrete, just a little bit of concrete in there. And so at this point, it may flush out, but if it's concrete, it may not.
Yep.
And it was no big deal. It becomes a big deal when you have other debris in there. And he mentioned he's seen bricks in there,
Yeah.
bottles in there, all kinds of things in there. And thankfully, they had the property inspected because as a homeowner, do you really open up the pipes and open up the lids to look down? And when you look down, are you able to really see inside and how far is this blockage? Because that can cause another problem. Don't even get me started on roots with these big trees and how
Yeah.
roots can block, because I've got a story for that too, but I will spare everyone. But what I was impressed with this inspection is that just for a little extra, a little extra money, my clients decided, I'm not an inspector and I don't play one on television, nor am I a plumber. So I'd better figure out if this little problem is going to grow into a bigger one. And so you do have to pay a little extra to get this level of diagnostics done and with this camera. And it's really cool. So if people have not seen this before, the way you guys can run that camera through the pipes and you can see everything. And I think of it as probably like a colonoscopy. You just getting in
Yes.
there with that camera and you're checking everything out, good, bad, or ugly.
Yes.
So, and there's a camera there that people can see, and you make that decision for yourself. But I would highly recommend, if the inspector says, hey, for a few extra dollars, we can take a look at this, it's worth it, because a few extra dollars can turn into thousands of dollars if it's gone ignored. And it's going to be ignored, let's be honest, because you don't know what you're looking at
Right.
as a homeowner for the most part, and you don't know what to look for. So you're looking at the beauty of the home, and there's some things you can see, but it's what we can't see that seems to be more costly and more expensive than something that's cosmetic.
Absolutely. And Tracy, if I may, I like to tell people there's 4 different reasons that if you're on the fence about a sewer camera, that I would highly recommend it. One is new construction for the reasons we just discussed. If there's been recent foundation or plumbing repair, maybe on an older home, it's always a good idea to check it, especially if foundation repair has been done, because sometimes those pipes can move. And in that process of repairing, it is possible to damage those pipes. Of course, if the house has cast iron, it's always a good idea to inspect it, whether through us, an inspector, or a plumbing company. And then the 4th reason would be for any house, whether it's cast iron or PVC, if there's large trees, like you said, roots like to get in drain cleanouts in the sewer line and cause damage. So those are really the 4 options. If you're buying a house and any of those apply, the sewer camera is a good idea to help maybe give you just an extra idea of what's happening.
Yeah, and let me just say, it's all nice and fun when it's new home or when it's just a little problem. But think about it. It's just been water going through it. You
Right.
move in and you've got the Super Bowl party and you're starting to use the sewage line. Now that's getting backed up. And the
Yes.
last thing I want you to lean in and get this. The last thing you want is raw sewage backing up into your beautiful new shower that was you picked it out. You picked all the beautiful whistles and bells for the shower, your tub, the toilet will overflow. And when I say it's a mess, I mean that literally. And just pony up the cash to get whatever you need to get done if you have problems with your sewer pipes. And that's all I'm saying on that.
Great advice. Great advice.
Yeah. I have someone who's in the chat, and I don't know if this person is under contract, but it sounds like there's a 911 going on. And so they would like to know, how quickly can I get an inspector out there if I decide to get my home inspected?
Yeah. So our company, Super Inspector, we try to offer same day inspections. So if you call and we can squeeze you in same day, if it's later in the day, it's a little harder to do that. But if you call and you're like, hey, I need an inspection today or tomorrow, we always try to get it within a day at most.
Okay. And then there's another question. It says, what if the seller won't pay for repairs? All right. So this person is apparently, if you're under contract, you have the option period. And in Texas, and I think in every state, there's some type of option period where you can terminate the contract based on a number of things. But in Texas, we have one where you can terminate the contract for any reason, especially if you purchase your option, because you're purchasing the option to terminate the contract. So that's why we encourage buyers to get your inspections done like toot sweet, I mean, right away. And that way it allows time for you to have the inspector out, get the report, go over the report with the inspector. And most inspectors are going to take detailed pictures. They're going to give you a detailed report, and we'll have follow-up conversations with you if there's something you still don't understand, even if they just went over it. Never feel intimidated by the inspector as if you're bothering them to get information, because this is your big investment. Right. So during that option period, that's when we negotiate these repairs with the seller. If it's a pre-owned home, I like to focus on deal breakers. This is not a punch list like you're going into an apartment. Right. If it's a pre-owned home and it's been lived in, it's not going to be perfect by definition. And sometimes new construction is not perfect. But you can ask for those sellers. If it is a deal breaker, I'm not moving in if the wires have been reversed. And we do see reverse wiring because some people don't hire professionals to do things. They think they can just be weekend warriors, and they have messed up the whole place. So when you see things that are like, you know what, I love this house, but I already see this is going to be a $2,000, $4,000, $5,000 or higher repair. And why should I inherit someone else's weekend warrior experiment? And then the seller might say, well, I lived like that. So if it was good enough for me, it's good enough for you. Right. You have a lot of power when you're under your option period. Because if it's like we are at the midnight hour and cannot come to an agreement, then if you're my client, I'm going to, if we get absolutely at a standstill, then I would say you do have an option. You purchase your option to terminate. We will find you a new home. It may be even better than what you found here. But if you don't have peace of mind and you're going to be tossing and turning and waking up in cold sweats all through the night over this HVAC unit, over the plumbing, over anything, it almost tarnishes your experiences moving into your home. You're going to always have that rattling around in the back of your head. When is this going to break? I've got to pay for, and it just takes away from the experience. But many times, most sellers who are rational, sane, and want to sell their home and not just have a for sale sign in the yard, they will negotiate the repairs. And all repairs, plumbing, electrical, HVAC. HVAC is your heating and air conditioner. They are supposed to be in Texas performed by licensed service people. They are licensed, they are bonded, they've got the paperwork that says I have the right to be in your home and I can perform this work. So I hope I answered that question, that yes, you don't have to inherit someone else's experiment, because you've already put down a lot of money to be in this home. The last thing you want to do is have to pay. I mean, you want to pay for your nice furniture, because you remember you didn't buy anything before you bought the home. We don't buy furniture for homes we don't own. But the last thing you want to do is add those extra expenses of someone else's, shenanigans is what we see a lot.
Yes.
Then I have a couple of more questions, and then I want to get back to some pictures, but I'm excited to be able to actually have a conversation and read the questions.
This is great.
That's
Yeah.
a victory. Okay. Okay, someone is saying it's a brand new house. Why do I need to spend money on this? And Robbie, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say there's kind of what I alluded to a little before. You know, the builder's going to say you don't need an inspection, or they're going to bring their own person in, and the idea is their best interest is selling on the closing on the house, right? They need to get that funded so they can start their next one, which I get. They're in the business. What we try to do to add value for you is help pick up the slack where they're not looking. They're not crawling in the attic after they're done. Once they've closed that attic ladder, that they're done, right? So I'm pulling it back open. I'm checking your heating equipment, making sure that they plumb things right. Is your furnace disconnected in the attic? It's going to pump a bunch of carbon monoxide into your attic space. We don't want that. Checking your insulation levels, making sure that it's up to the current standards. A lot of houses are built outside of the county, and they don't always get the most thorough code inspection from the city inspector, and the builder will just sign off on it and call it good. Well, if you have somebody like myself working for you, I'm working for you. I'm not working for the builder or the city. And the idea is I'm going to call out what can be a problem for you in the future. If the roofing wasn't installed correctly, you go to get insurance on the house. They're going to deny it because it was installed poorly or there's already damage to the roof. You go to have your foundation checked. We do foundation measurements at Super Inspector. We want to make sure that brand new foundation is poured correctly. I've found at least 2 houses this year where they poured the foundation on a bit of a slope, and they were already getting large fractures in the brick. And they had to go back to their engineer and have the foundation reevaluated on a brand new house. So we're trying to help catch those kinds of things while it's the builder's responsibility and their problem before it becomes your problem, even with the warranties that they offer.
Mhm. Right, that's a good idea. And there are a couple of things you said, and I want to hit upon this.
Sure.
Oftentimes, codes change. So if the home was built in 2016, 2020, the code can change by the time you decide to purchase it. So the homeowner is not going to rewire the entire home because the code changed. So
Right.
it's really important to have that conversation with the inspector or with me, just like you would with your physician, to say, okay, I know the code has changed, but is this a life-threatening code where it's going to be a hazard to myself or to the home? And if it is, then maybe we can go back and reason with the seller. But it's not something where because these inspection reports, oh, that's like reading, Jane Austen novel. I mean, they can be
Book
pretty long
sometimes. Yep.
because they have to point out everything they see in the home at the time they were there. So it's not guaranteed 2 weeks from the inspection because anything can happen between today and 2 weeks from today. So they guarantee what they saw there, and they will give you a chart. This item exists. It didn't exist in this home, and this is something we really encourage you to look at twice. So you're not just going to get a booklet. Just here you go. When you're finished with that inspector, if you have the inspection, if you have it scheduled, let's say from 9 to 3, and the inspector says, I'm going over the summary at about 2:15. If you can pop over, that's great. Because trust me, you don't want to be there 5 hours for an
Right.
inspection, but you do want to be there for the summary so that inspector can go over certain details with you. So you as a consumer understand what's happening, because if they just gave you that book, you're not going to understand it. And the other thing you mentioned, Robbie, that, pulling down that attic ladder, I'm not even doing that.
Right.
Now, we know we have some people who are self-proclaimed experts in all things. And I just want to warn you, if your cousin, your dad, your best friend shows up to the inspection with their, supplies, like they have, their hammer and their rulers and everything, just don't do it, because they don't know what a licensed inspector knows. Because we have, and frankly, they get in the way, because sometimes we like to jock and show our expertise when we don't really know what we're talking about. And to this day, if I need something in and out of the attic, I'm sending my husband, I'm sending someone else. So I know that the attic exists, but I wouldn't be able to go up there and say that the rafter has been damaged.
Mhm.
Neither many consumers won't. Some will. Some homeowners, buyers, they love it. The garage is the first place they want to go to,
Mhm.
and then they're pulling down that ladder, and I just play along with them and let them have their feel because they want to make sure they've done their due diligence. And some of them actually they know what they're doing.
Yes.
But yeah, but the pulling down the attic, I mean, how much do you know beyond what you see? Do you know how much insulation should be in there? Do you know if there's reverse or something that's kind of rigged up? So, I would just leave that in the hands of the expert.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Hey, here's some trends. I want to hit you up with about some trends. And this is about the solar panels.
Yeah.
So solar panels, we understand the merit of getting the solar panels and why people do it. But my question and concern is once they're on the roof, does that limit your ability to inspect the entire roof, or has that been not an issue?
So yeah, that's a great question. So part of it, yes, it does inhibit the shingles where those panels are. We always try to look underneath them, but there is limited looking. If they had it installed, maybe after a hailstorm, there's a possibility that there's hidden damage underneath there. The other thing we do is we're looking at those panels, and they are beyond the scope of a Texas home inspection. But I will specifically look at them for cracks or damage, improper mounting, if they look like they're about to slash the roof, if the wiring is exposed or frayed. We're looking for those kinds of things that could become problems later on. So yeah, they have benefits, especially when it comes to the electricity bill and how that kind of helps offset some of your utility costs. But as an inspector, it does inhibit some of the view of the roof. And there's some other things that you might want to consider too. If you ever have to replace the roof, a lot of times the insurance company doesn't want to pay for the solar panel to be removed and replaced. That's something that may have to come out of the homeowner's pocket.
Okay. So it's up to them to decide if all of that offsets the electricity they might be
Right.
saving, the
Yeah,
energy.
exactly.
Okay. All right. So we know we have people who will be watching this now or in the future from all over the country. And hopefully they are relocated to Texas, and I
Yes.
will be their chosen realtor. Let's talk a little bit about what you can see and what seems to be special to Texas in this general region. And one thing I want to show you is that I did have an inspection done, and this one was a new home, but frankly, you can see cracks in all the homes.
Yes.
Um, Talk to us a little bit about when to hit that panic button and when not.
Yeah, absolutely. So this picture is a good photo of what we often call a common crack. It's a common crack because it's a straight line all the way across. It's because there's likely two pieces of drywall, and then there's a tape joint, and then they texture over it. And so when the house settles and moves, which I'll explain a little more in a minute, that is one of the first signs of some of that settling. So it is very normal to see that. New construction, older homes, that's just nature of our soil, like you talked about. So we have clay soil. The best way I've heard it explained is it's like a sponge. When it gets wet and water sits, it'll expand. And when it dries, it'll contract and shrink. So you think of your foundation that way. When there's a lot of rainy season, you'll have water that could stand by the house. That's something that we are looking for as inspectors. And if water sits there for too long, it can start to lift on that foundation. It's known as heaving. The opposite is true. During the summer, when it's really dry, really hot, and we're not getting much rain, the soil will contract and you'll start to get dropping, what's called settling. And so we're always looking for heaving and settling in Texas homes. Common cracks like this, we will often refer to cracks in the actual concrete foundation wall as common cracks. You'll sometimes see corner pops. Those are very normal. Those are not alarm issues, in my opinion. The problems that you want to look for, what would be panic button items, would be a diagonal fracture. So if you have a fracture over a door or window, right, and you have a fracture that kind of goes like this up towards like the corner, that like this, that's a sign of stress. I found this at a house that was quite a bit older and it had not had any foundation repair. And you can see there's some large gaps in where the brick and mortar is. but also that brick is starting to offset. So if the wall is straight like this and it starts to pull away, that's some signs of stress in that area. In this case, this is something I would recommend either a licensed engineer, structural engineer, or a trusted foundation company to evaluate.
Lot of caulking that people do and putting extra mortar in there. But you can also have obviously water intrusion and
Yes,
critter intrusion, and then
yes.
that's it just goes on and on.
It's
So
an
that's
ongoing domino
definitely
effect.
yeah, it's just never ending. Then the worst part is the your imagination
Yes,
that would go on with some of these cracks that you see. But yeah, some of those things they can get. If hey, if you can put your fist through the crack, then we recommend you get an engineer out there or get someone to inspect the foundation. But
yes,
yeah, a credit card is wide enough for me. But there are some places in brick where you see a little natural or some separation. I guess that helps the house breathe.
yes.
But yeah, yeah, this is not breathing here. This
Right.
is you got a full blown asthma attack going
Yeah,
on this house.
there's a problem for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
another thing, if you don't mind, is hail. Right, in Texas, we get a lot of hail, so that's something I always tell people. You know, about every 5 to 7 years, we get hailstorms throughout DFW, and that's something we look for as an inspector, primarily for insurance. Most insurance companies are looking for 8 hail strikes within a 10 by 10 square of the roof, and if you have more than that, then that's when we would recommend a roofer. Roofers deal with adjusters and insurance companies, so they kind of know what would be considered a problem as far as insurability, or if there's something that can be repaired pretty easily to make sure that it's insurable.
okay. Then I have a couple of more slides that I
Yeah.
want to share and get your opinion because I do see sometimes I see people in their inspection report, they're flagged for this. What is this?
So this is just showing that the drain cover is loose, most likely, or it's not sloped enough. So water's going to not run to the middle. It's going to just kind of sit in the shower.
And then underneath the shower, underneath the pretty tile, what's underneath there? What should be underneath there?
Underneath that, you should have a shower pan, and then that shower pan carries anything that gets past it and leaks outside. Well, if the shower pan fails, you have your plywood, or it's sometimes concrete, and this is a good example of a piece of tile, or a shower pan that has failed and has allowed water past that shower enclosure.
Okay. What's one of the signs you can tell something is going on there? If the tile is cracked, or at what point should someone take a let's say you bought a home, pre-owned home. It's only 10 years old. That's still fairly new to me.
Right.
And you start to see that cracking at or around the drain. At what point is that something to be concerned about, or that's just the soil shifting?
Yeah, a lot of times it is just the shifting. So, you'll see the little cracks that start to form around the tile, and that's fairly normal. The concern comes if that pan, there's supposed to be some sort of either plastic, fiberglass, PVC, metal, there's a few different materials. That pan is supposed to catch anything that gets past those tiles. So, what you may hear sometimes in older houses, which I would say older than 2010 even, would be if that shower pan failed, sometimes if it's on an exterior wall, you'll see water running down the foundation through the brick. That's indicating that water is getting past that shower pan. That's definitely when I would recommend having a plumber evaluate that area. But little cracks, you have the time. You don't have to do it right away, but as soon as possible, because you just don't want that to get worse and worse. Especially tile can allow fungal growth over time. If moisture sits behind tile and it doesn't drain out or dry out, you'll sometimes get fungal growth that starts to come up through the tile.
Yikes.
Yeah. So it's always good to keep it as sealed as possible, whether it's fiberglass or tile. It's primarily seen with tile showers, but great question.
Okay. Then we have a question, and I included a slide for the people who love your TikTok videos. And what we're starting to see are things like this coming up through the pipes.
Yep.
How realistic is that? Have you heard or seen where these snakes in a toilet type of thing?
I have heard it actually from other inspectors that I'm friends with, but it is a pretty rare occurrence. I've not seen it in my career, but it is possible. So those pipes are draining outside in older houses, especially in the county. Sometimes you can get snakes coming up that way, or if there's a crack or an opening in that pipe, snakes will find their way up the line. But yeah, it's less common in DFW that I've seen. It's more popular, or it's more common for this to happen out in the county when you're outside of city limits.
Oh, well, yeah, because you're stirring up their natural habitat,
That's right.
building your home. That's
Yes.
their domain. You have a nerve bringing in these trucks and bringing all these dirt, stirring up things. And I know one thing around in DFW, what you see, especially I can speak personally for the Keller area of our DFW, some of the South Lake, North Fort Worth, is we still have coyotes around.
Yeah.
So if you're stirring up people's natural habitat, they may come visit you just to say hi, slither and say hello from time to time. It's possible. So
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. And it's a good point, with that too, especially if you're buying a new house. I recommend rodent baits. A lot of times stirring up the rodents that are nearby, they will try to find a way back in. They want to stay warm, right? And so it's not uncommon to see rodent baits around the house or in the attic as a preventative measure, just to keep any possible activity from getting in.
Right. And by rodents, we mean because there's so many trees around.
Yes.
Yeah, not like, oh no, not like the New York style, excuse me.
Right. Not rats. Usually it's more like field mice or squirrels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Squirrels are really common, especially in older neighborhoods too. So, but they like to find ways in.
Yeah. Well, Robbie, I appreciate your time because I do know that excuse me, let's try that again. That affordability is a huge conversation that
Sure.
we hear. And I think it's across industries where people are just kind of waiting and seeing what's going on with the market, what's going on with employment, what's going on with a lot of things. And sometimes we choose to cut corners. But what my recommendation is to cut the corner of your Starbucks run or your eating out and some of your other things that you might love to do and feel as though you can't survive without. Put those on pause. I wouldn't dare ask you to quit them altogether because I know that's not going to happen.
Right.
But just put it on pause until you purchase your home and do all of the steps that are required or highly suggested for you to do before you close on your home. Now, and if it is new construction, you can just hand them that booklet of an inspection report, and they typically will use that as a punch list because the home is new and they do stand by their warranties. Usually it's a 10-year warranty on your slab. So you hand that to the builder's rep and they'll take care of it. And but if it's one that's been existing, they may not treat your inspection report as a punch list. Sometimes they could be defensive. And it's because they had no idea of what's going on. But the builders, the sellers who are on the same spectrum. Now we've got all kinds because we deal with people.
Yes.
Some people are just flat out irrational and unreasonable. But let's say we have a seller who wants to sell the home, and you as a buyer, you're interested in purchasing the home. You got it under contract. If you're at this stage, the home is under contract. Surely we can come to terms with this inspection report or any other things that may be seen in the home to where we can move this on to closing. You can have the house that you can enjoy, see your family come gather. If you want them to come over, you may not want to share your address with some, but you can have your friends over, have your cookouts, and enjoy your home, whether it's an existing home or brand new home. But I think Robbie and I would both say, we've been doing this for a while. And usually the people who are very devastated, 6 months, because it's almost like getting that new car. It smells fresh. It's just something about that new car smell.
Right.
But when that new car smell goes away, that's when you might start noticing some things. And the same with the home. But once you start unpacking and you're living there, you might see some settling, and some of that is okay. But what we don't want you to do is move into a space, and you had no idea that these things were going on. So at least if you have an inspection report, you know what's going on. You just may have chosen not to pursue it and ask the seller to correct or adjust those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I call it education. You know, a lot of inspectors like to be what's called an alarmist, right? Where they try to scare people and like, here's what I found, what's wrong. And our approach is we're trying to educate you as the buyer. We want to make sure you have all the info, the complete overview of the house that you love, that you're emotionally getting involved in. And we want to make sure you see it from the facts, right? And what you can do is you gather those facts. You know, we tell people get complete, go through that booklet, right? Kind of make notes of what's important to you. And that's why you have Tracy. She's really, you're going to be your expert going forward with this stuff. And look, if we can't help Tracy get to that negotiating point to try to help save you some money and maybe some future headaches, then we're not doing our job properly. No, it's a team effort.
It truly is. Well, Robbie, I appreciate your time. And if anyone else reaches out to me and they have a question about an inspection in general,
Yeah,
or a particular area, because they may not be in DFW. Let's say
right.
they're somewhere on the East Coast,
Sure.
and maybe you happen to have a network of people that you would refer. Because if you're like me, I don't hand out names like candy. I'm very, very particular with whom I refer people to, because I feel like it's a reflection of me. Because
Yes.
if they mess up, I'm Dak Prescott all over again.
Right.
I'm the MVP. They're coming back to me
Yes.
to tell me and let me know all about it.
Sure.
So yeah. So no matter where you are, if you're not in DFW, if you're in DFW, we've got you covered. But
Right.
even if you're, in some other part of our Texas, great state of Texas, which is huge, then we can get you connected with someone who we know that we vetted and we trust will do a thorough job for you. Because I'm just suspecting, Robbie, that an inspector is like a realtor. We all have to pass our test. We all
Mhm.
have to have a standard that the state of Texas requires.
Yes.
But like realtors, we're not all created equal. Some
Right.
of you wonder did you really take the test, or did you do got somebody else to do
We,
it for
we
you?
we have some of
So we
those
just
in our
want to
world too.
caution you that when you just go find somebody,
Yeah.
just ask around and see who people would really use and why. And again, you don't go for the cheap.
Right.
Remember,
Yes.
cheap is not part of our vocabulary when we're looking out for the best interest of your home. So it may not be the least expensive inspector out there, but you want to get the best one.
That's right. And a lot of times too, I like to help clients out, even if they aren't using our company, because we understand, there's other companies that may be closer or have a better deal or maybe have something that the person likes in general. But if you have a question from that report and you're like, I don't know how to make sense of this, please call me, shoot me a text or an email. I can look through it and kind of say, I think you meant this, or this is what he was trying to say, and try to maybe explain it in more layman's terms to make it clearer if it's not clear. So that's something I like to offer anybody that would like it.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Robbie, for joining me today. Don't skip this is the title. And I also had a video that I've done with inspection. It's called Don't Be Cheap. Because it is where your peace of mind
Yes,
is worth however much it costs to have your home inspected.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Yeah, yes, anytime. I'll have you back. But thank you everyone for joining. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to us, comment, give us a call. We'll be happy to help you. Which home inspector you need to connect with as you are finding your home where you plan to create your memories here in our Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.